Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Inner Changemaker. So excited to be here with you again in another interview. And today we have a really interesting guest, to say the least. And over the last 2 decades, my guest, Steve Sims, has quietly become known as the Wizard of Oz to the world's wealthiest celebrities, professional athletes, and some of the most successful entrepreneurs. And we will talk about his story because I want to ask him how he's been able to earn the reputation of being the guy to make anything happen, especially when no isn't an option and money isn't an issue. And to give you some insight into what I'm actually referring to, he's been able to help some of his clients get married at the Vatican. He helped a client get down to the Titanic, which that's insane. He's been able to reserve a rocket to the International Space Station. And I know I'm just naming just a couple of the extraordinary, ordinary things for this man. Literally right after this interview, he's got to go set up for some of his clients at the Grammys. And so I want to welcome to the show, Mr. Steve Sims.
Pleasure to be here, and it's the Oscars.
Oh, it's the Oscars. I apologize. So, Steve, I'm so excited to have you on because you have come highly recommended by so many people. And obviously, literally, I was reading one article on Forbes, and in that article, there's pictures of you with, Elon Musk and Steve Tyler from Aerosmith, Michael Bloomberg, Donald Trump. I mean, how does it feel for you being known as kind of this Wizard of Oz guy over the last 2 decades of your work? How does that personally land for you?
Well, for 18 years of it, it was really fun because I was known in a small niche of international society, but to the rest of the planet, I was just 230 pound of ugly that rode around on motorcycles. And now, over the past 2 years, people have kind of got to know me. They've heard podcasts. They've seen the book. They've seen, me giving more speeches. So now I've become more known.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, it's a little bit frightening. It's definitely humbling, but it's been a change. So the last 2 years has kind of like been someone as unveiled. And as they say, 20 years to be an overnight success. That's kind of what it feels like.
Wow. And there's so many different angles. When you said yes to the interview, I knew that you were coming out with your book, Blue Fishing, the art of making things happen. And I do want to dive into that. But I'm just really curious because you have such a unique, job, right? And, we were talking a little off record. You solve very unique problems, So I'm curious, before you became known as the guy that makes anything happen, what was life like back then, before you had you got this job, this position in this company of yours?
Well, like all entrepreneurs, we feel as though there's friction. We feel as though there's a rub where we're not fitting in. And I was a bricklayer from East London, and I just knew that something wasn't quite clicking right. So I tried many, many different things: cake sales, insurance, truck driving, bouncer, security guard, loads of different things. Ended up in Hong Kong through trying to get a job and failing at it and getting fired. And I was working on a door. And I keep things real primitive, real basic. I'm known for making things as uncomplicated as they should be. And I thought to myself, if I want to be rich, the old saying about you are the combination of the 5 people you know, I looked at the 5 guys that I was with, and we could all afford maybe 4 beers between us. Right. I thought if I start hanging out with more rich people, then surely I'll get some of the crumbs. So I made a conscious decision to become of value to a financial set. And so in this situation, I was working on the door, but I started to get to know rich people. And before you know it, they were asking, could I get things? And I was like, sure I can. That'd be $2,000. That'd be $5,000. That'd be 150 grand. And before you knew it, I started to get these things rolling. And it's like any momentum. As soon as you start getting known for being able to do, more people want you.
Yeah. What do you remember? What was maybe one of the, because I mean, some of these things that people ask of you, right? In terms of getting married or booking the entire Vatican off or going down to the Titanic. I mean, these are what probably seems like impossible ask by most people. So do you remember when the first time someone I mean, maybe shocked you with an ask, or something that was like really, really difficult to do back in the day?
I do, but it's not gonna shock and awe you. Whenever you do something and then you do something a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger, it's only a matter of time before the end product looks huge, but it started off small.
Sure.
The first thing that really kind of knocked me sideways was I was starting to get known in Hong Kong as the guy that had access and knew what was going on.
Sure.
And these 4 guys turned up at a club that I was working at, and they asked me about a yacht party that was going on down the road. And I was like, oh, what one's that? I didn't know anything about it. Now, these guys were 4 good-looking, affluent guys that were spending money and enjoying life. And so I remember seeing them go in the club. They told me they couldn't get into the yacht party. Mm-hmm. Now, I found that challenging because as far as I was concerned, any high-end company wants people that are going to spend money with them. Yep. So it didn't make sense to me. And so it was a personal irritation. I went down to the yacht and before the party started and asked them, why is this? You know, can my boys turn up at 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock? And I was very confused why they weren't on the list.
Right.
And I spoke to the girl and I had a little chat with her and she took the details down. And I went back to the guys and I went, all right, I got you in. You're all sorted. $2,000. And they were like, oh, I didn't think that. And they paid me. And I noticed something straight away. Had they gone down and asked themselves and been polite and respectful about it, they'd have probably got in. But most people don't do that for humiliation. Most people are embarrassed about asking for things. Now, that was a yacht party. It's very similar to the Vatican. It's very similar to closing down an entire museum and having a dinner party at the feet of Michelangelo's David and having Andrea Bocelli come in to serenade him. All you've got to do is start with an ask. And most people nowadays are actually frightened of asking anything for fear of being told no.
Wow. And that's amazing because I think there's so much power in what you just said there. A lot of times, even, I mean, a very basic example, sometimes people ask me, it's like, how do you get certain people on the show? How do you get Steve Sims on the show? You know, how do you get, you know, some of the New York bestsellers or whoever, you know, millionaires and billionaires on your show? And sometimes the simple answer is that I simply asked. And it seems like, I know you've talked about this a couple times, but do you feel that people have kind of lost, like it's so common sense, but why do you think people, I guess, don't go down and ask themselves or don't go and ask for kind of the impossible thing?
Oh, I know exactly why. And it all started when you were about 8 years old. Okay. When you're at school and the teacher's teaching you something and you don't get it, or someone in the class doesn't get it, they stick their hand up and go, Miss, I don't get it. And the teacher turns around and rephrases it. Now, very, very rarely will that child ever put their hand up a second time, because the second that they do, every idiot in the class is turning around going, oh, you're an idiot, you don't get it, and they're jeering them. From a young age, we're taught to avoid humiliation. And as we get older, that actually amplifies. And I'm going to tell you a very, very sad story. I was walking through a shopping mall with my wife. In front of me were a couple of guys. In front of that was a woman, older woman, and she had a ton of bags on her arms, and she tripped. Now, because she had these bags on her arms, she wasn't able to do that with her hands and protect her fall. Poor woman went smack down. Now, I run to pick her up like any gentleman should. Thankfully, these 2 guys in front of me were also gentlemen. They run in and they grabbed her. As she was being lifted up, I noticed her head was looking all over the place. I thought maybe she'd lost her wallet, her phone, you know, her handbag, something like that. I'm looking around trying to see what she had seen or what she had lost. And I caught her eye and I said, is something missing? And she said, no, I just wanted to make sure no one was videoing this. Wow. The poor woman had fallen down. Damn straight she's hurt something because she was an older woman. Yeah. And all she was concerned about was someone videoing it to laugh at it later. And that personally concerns me about today.
Well, I mean, in the world of social media and, you know, mini viral videos and everybody posting, you know, behind the scenes of their life or feeling like they need to do that, you you know, I could, you know, it's sad, but unfortunately it's the world that majority, I feel, people live in. For you, how were you able to, did you ever, I guess, suffer from that, or did you feel that you had a way of overcoming that for yourself, and especially when you're starting out your business and your brand, and you mentioned a lot of the things that you tried in different careers, did you ever struggle with that?
Luckily, and I say luckily, my life was very poor, and it wasn't until I got older that I realized I was actually incredibly wealthy. But as a young lad in a bricklayer's world, I wasn't introduced to, you know, Gucci and Prada and Ferraris and all of these privileged labels. I didn't know what they were, so I was ignorant to them. So I'd see a pretty car, and I'd be like, I didn't resent them. I was like, oh, that's a pretty car. You know, I had no I had no preset conception of what the person driving it was like. You know, now we see a guy in a rich car, and a lot of people want to go, oh, look at that show off. Look at, that guy's worked all his bloody life to get that beautiful car. You know?
Exactly, yeah.
So stop naturally being a hater. But I never had that. And 9 times out of 10, if I saw someone with something nice, a watch, a car, buying artwork, drinking expensive wine, I would actually, and I still do, I go up to them and I go, look, you've just ordered a 300 bottle of wine. I'd love to know, what do you see in that bottle of wine that makes it worth $300? You know, I want to know. I have a lust to learn. So I was ignorant to this as I grew up. Because I was ignorant to it, I had nothing to lose. Yeah. So my big value for me, my big luck, was that you couldn't humiliate me because I was an East London bricklayer. I had nothing to lose. And as I grew, I did go through a period where I suddenly started worrying about other people. Yeah. Thankfully, I got over that really fast. Now I associate with people. Probably one of the most famous for the anti-humiliation is Elon Musk. If Elon Musk worried about humiliation, he wouldn't have left a PayPal organization and launched a car manufacturing company and then taken NASA head on. If that guy was worried about people laughing at him, he would have never got off the ground. And most successful people, they look at that humiliation as fuel. It's almost throwing the gauntlet down. That there's enough people saying no. What are they scared of? I know what they're scared of. They're scared of me actually achieving it.
Yeah. I was rereading one of Steve Pressfield's book. I think it was Turning Pro or War of Art. And there's a segment in there where he talks about the difference of the amateur and the pro. And essentially it's like the amateur is one that worries about the opinions of others, whereas the pro actually doesn't care and sits down and does the work, right? And whether it's, you know, to make the call, whether it's to knock on the doors or whatever it is, they actually get to work. So I love that. I love that you brought that up.
I've got a picture that was my wife bought for me, and it's got Jack Nicholson in it. Yeah. And he's smoking a cigar, and underneath it said, I don't need your approval. I never asked for it. You know, and I've got that on my wall. And I want to be Steve Sims. I want to be impossible to misunderstand. And if that resonates with you, great. If it doesn't, move along.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. I gotta ask you, because you wrote this amazing book. I kind of wish we would have done this a few months ago when you had released it. And I'm just curious because we've had some authors on here, and I'm sure there's people listening to this that one day they maybe want to write a book or put a book into the world. What was the motivation for you to kind of share some of the things that you've shared in the book to maybe get that message out there?
Well, in doing what I was doing, I've always been in the press, I've always been in the media, and I'd always been asked for probably about 12 years of the 20 plus years of Bluefish to actually do a book on the rich and famous and what they get up to and the ultimate travel. But I didn't want to do any of those things because they didn't benefit me, and I'm a selfish person.
Yeah.
Then when the recession came across in like 2007 and such, and I started doing more entrepreneurial work, it was 2 years ago that Simon Schuster asked me, would you write a book not on what you're doing. We want to know how you do it. We want to know the methodology, the structure. How do you brand? How do you market? How do you build up relationships? And it made me realize then that I was irritated with the world I was in. And I appear like a phenomenal communicator because everyone else is getting worse at it. And the worse they get, the better I look. So I actually have kids, and I thought to myself, this is giving me a chance now. And I remember speaking to Jay Abraham about it when I got the proposal. And I remember saying to him, this is giving me the chance to change things and adapt a world that I want to live in. Yeah. Because at the moment, we've all got 50,000 freaking friends on Facebook. We've got email databases of hundreds of thousands. Yeah. We don't know these people, but they're all there, and we call them friends. And until you can pay your bar tab with Facebook likes, it means nothing. So all of these platforms that are apparently, and I'm air quoting here, communication, Twitter, Snapchat, any of those, all the time you think you're actually communicating through those, you're wrong. The ROI on a solid relationship can beat Bitcoin any day of the week.
Steve, first of all, I love it because I wanted to bring this up a little later, but you beat me to the punch a little bit. Your team shared with me a few of your blue fishing playbooks, kind of like little quotes from the book, and I love so many of them. But one of them was like the Facebook likes. You can't pay everything with Facebook likes. But I'm curious, what did you mean when you said, when people look at you, you seem like a really great communicator, but it's because everyone else maybe is not so great at communication? What do you think is maybe missing for a lot of, the people that are maybe more obsessed with social media and, the email base, with 50,000 people, and the Instagram with, 2,000 likes on it, and that, they're getting some validation from that. Could you clarify that a little bit?
Yeah, very easily. One word: transparency. I have an incredibly intelligent gut. A lot of people say that their brain thinks, but when you get a bit concerned about something, it's your gut that actually doesn't feel right. You get butterflies when something's not right. Yeah. I've become really good at trusting my gut. So when I meet someone, I want to know very quickly, why is that person in front of me? Now, there's this word going around which pisses me off: authenticity. Okay? The fact that we're now celebrating people for actually being who they are is like celebrating us because we're walking and breathing and drinking. It's ridiculous. But I do love transparency. I want you to get in front of me and I want you to go, hey, Steve, how you doing? Should we grab a whiskey? I wanted to talk to you about X. Yeah. Now, I can handle that conversation. Don't give a rat's ass what you're watching on Netflix. I don't care what your favorite food is. I care that there's a reason for us to be engaged in communication and whether or not it's going to be beneficial. Now, if that's chatting about your favorite food later on, great. But I want that transparency. I want to know that you are a safe person that is entertaining, engaging, and educational in front of me that I can enjoy my next 30 minutes with. I don't want you going, hey, it's really good. Yes, it's lovely. Oh, I like your shirt. And so I don't care. Okay? So I like the transparency. When I phone up the Vatican, the academia, the Russian station that's going down to Titanic, the Oscars, rock stars, business icons, I phone them up and very quickly make it completely obvious what it is I want, why I'm on the phone, and how it benefits them. Complete transparency breeds confidence and the ability for you to be comfortable with someone because they now know there's no hidden agenda. And the downside nowadays is there's a ton of hidden agendas. So try being transparent. Screw authenticity. Go for transparency.
Yeah. So do you think, I love this because I think a lot of times when words like authenticity gets really, really popular, people almost use it as a marketing tactic, or they use it as like a new shiny toy almost, right? So are you saying that people are maybe overcomplicating it, trying to be a little too slick, right? In terms of the way they're posturing and showing up?
Oh, you're kidding? Just because you can say the word fuck does not make you authentic. And you get these people jump up on stage yelling it out, and they think it's a tagline. Oh, I'm so raw, I'm so street cred. There's no necessity for it. So I'm a great believer that you were born unique. You were born to be completely individual. Stop trying to copy someone else.
I love that. I love that. And everyone that's listening and watching this, I mean, please go pick up a copy of Blue Fishing. I mean, it has an amazing, a lot of principles, a lot of great stories in there. Steve, out of all the maybe principles, and this is obviously not asking you to give it all away, but maybe what are some of your kind of personal favorite principles from writing the book that it kind of made you think to yourself that, you know what, that is a great one? Or is it the authenticity piece?
I was very lucky, and I actually urge everyone to write a book.
Okay.
There are many different companies out there now that can get you into print. You can go through, Tucker Max, my boy Tucker. Shout out to Tucker. He's got a book in the box.
Yeah.
Dean Jackson's got 90-minute book. There's a whole bunch of them. Those two are my good boys, so I'm going to give those a joint plug there. But something happens when you're writing a book. You discover the nuggets that make you who you are. And when I was starting to write the book, I had someone who was transcribing it for me. So you don't have to be great on a typewriter. They were coming back to me and they were going, hang on a minute, you do this? And I'd be like, yeah, I always do that. And they'd be like, nobody else does. And you suddenly start discovering your secret sauce. It's very revealing to you. And I remember getting into this book, and the first thing I tried doing was almost making it sound a bit slicker than it was, because I wanted, and I hate to say this, you to be bettered for it. I wanted it to sound good for you.
Sure.
Basically, I was looking for your approval, which I've never done before. The second I thought, well, hang on a minute, I'm a 17-year-old bricklayer, now 51, kicking around with Elon Musk. Something I'm doing must be doing it right.
Yeah.
So I looked at the basics. I looked at the basic principles, and I built a book that basically said, if I can do it, you're out of excuses. One of my favorite things from the book was a story that about my dad walking down London for no reason whatsoever, chugging on his 30th cigarette in like the last 20 minutes, stuck his hand on my shoulder without even looking at me and said, son, no one ever drowned by falling in the water. They drowned by staying there. He didn't even follow it with anything else. He just walked off. I remember being a young kid going, what the hell was that for? But as I grew up, I realized that the amount of times I've fallen down, and as all entrepreneurs, we fall down and we fail a lot. And failure is by far the greatest education you'll ever get. Wear it with pride. You just learn how not to do something. People pay a fortune for that. Yeah. That's education. I learned that every time I fell down, I just learned a phenomenal way to get back up. And no one ever gets up the same height, the same strength. You get up taller and you get up stronger because you've now conquered that. And you can remember that because it's very, very rare you ever fall down the same way twice.
That's so riveting. I usually don't ask this question because it almost seems like too generic of a podcast question, but I gotta ask because you brought up failures.
I'm ready.
Yeah, like you gotta ask. Tell us what you do, Steve. But no. So, out of all your, what are maybe some of your favorite failures? Or maybe one in particular that kind of stood out to you that you really got a lot from that experience when you came back.
It was probably we signed a contract to be with the largest music event. And for this reason, I can't mention their name, but you did earlier in this podcast. It was the largest music event of the year. And we signed a contract to become the official concierge of this event. It was very, very good for us for publicity. It was very, very good for us for access. What I'd not paid attention to was within the contract, I didn't have what was called perpetuity rights, which meant that basically the second the show finished, I couldn't use any of the photographs, or I could not even mention the name of the event.
No.
So So what I did...
Well, thankfully I did it for you in this one.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, I wouldn't have been able to, as I haven't done. I got sued 2 years running because of that. And it was the most disgusting thing that they were quite happy to take my money, but they wouldn't ever allow me to say what historically I had been involved in. That taught me, that was a lot of money, about $250,000.
Wow.
But every single contract I get into now, I've learned from that. And I've been working with Sir Elton John's AIDS Foundation for the past 3 years. And I will tell you that experience I had from that music event taught me to check these. And these are the greatest guys in the world because I'm asking the right questions. And now, thankfully, we have a fantastic relationship because of it.
Wow. Steve, I would love to get a whiskey with you because I feel like that you have so many of these tiny stories that are absolutely amazing. And if you want to get a bit of Steve Sims in your life, I really do recommend picking up Blue Fishing, The Art of Making Things Happen. A couple last kind of questions. Actually, before we jump to that, I do have some of these pulled up. And I love that you said that your father told you no one ever drowned from falling in the water. They drown from staying there. So don't be afraid to jump. That was one of the first ones that caught my eye. And I said, wow, that is a huge, huge thing. Another one that really, that kind of made me stop for a second. It says, passion is something you have to discover. It takes time, but you never stop looking. So for you, it seems that you eventually figured out that this was part of your gift. Was it intentional? Like, were you on a search to kind of find your gift? Because I feel like a lot of people out there, depending on which stage they're at, they want to figure out what their unique ability is. They want to figure out, what their genius is and what they're passionate about. Did you find that you kind of stumbled onto it, or was it was your intention, no matter where, which job or career you were in, that you were going to find it?
I think you've already realized that I wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed as a kid. I left school at the age of 15, classed myself as an educated man, but school had nothing to do with it. I just spent most of my earlier years, like most entrepreneurs, irritated. And I knew there was something out there, but I had no idea what it was. I was just ready with my arms open. I've noticed a lot of entrepreneurs, they try to find things. They want to be passionate about, artwork, but they're not very good at it. And then they get disgruntled and they just close themselves up. Try as many things as you can in your life and just be prepared to accept those that excite. Because if you take that rejection as shutting down, then you won't be ready. You won't be ready to find that thing that goes, oh my God, I really enjoyed that. And holy shit, I'm actually good at it. Yeah. That's the aha moment. I didn't expect to be like the nicer version of Ray Donovan. I didn't go out and write a PowerPoint to try and be that person. Yeah. It just became something that along the way I realized, I'm not getting a lot of resistance here because I'm actually quite good at getting it done. Yeah. So I'm going to do it twice. And that's how it came about.
I love that. And honestly, we say it all the time on the podcast. And tons of guests always share this, right? I think Sean Stevenson shared this. Naveen Jain might have shared it as well. Is that common sense is not common practice. Something as simple as, do you feel resistance to that? Or do you get excited by thinking of doing it? Some of the easiest advice, but I think a lot of people kind of miss it sometimes because it's almost too simple.
Yeah, my whole book is talking about the basics. I remember as a kid, my parents sending me to karate classes. Yeah. And I hated it because every week we did the exact same forms, we did the exact same katas, and it was repetitive beyond belief, and I hated it. And then whenever you get into sport, you're taught to do the basics. I race motorcycles now. You're taught to understand the basics. It's those basics that make you brilliant. And when you start to kind of find things aren't working again, go back to the basics. It's those primitive, raw, ugly principles that really get you into a brilliant position.
That's awesome. And you're so right. I mean, when you hire a coach, I remember I hired a business coach a little while ago, and I thought we were going to dive into my business, right? Like you hire a business coach, let's dive into the business. I want to optimize this. I want to get this going. I want to, I had all these things. I had like a to-do list to do. And we spent probably the first couple months, he wanted to optimize me as an entrepreneur, the way I was thinking, the way I was hydrating, the way I was breathing from like almost like a high performance standpoint. And I thought, man, this is so basic. But I think the beauty in sometimes doing the fundamentals is that you get good at doing the fundamentals so that you could do the other things. So I love that you brought that up. I know you probably gotten asked this a couple times, but you had this URL before, which I thought was really funny, uglysims.com. And I Googled it right before when he said yes to the interview. I was like, yes, because I wanted to have you on the show. And one of the things that you point out is be your ugly self. Right.
Yeah.
And I think that's so refreshing. We talked about it so much on the episode already. But for you, what does that actually mean? To be your ugly self.
I think we've become very confused in our brain. We're constantly looking at TVs, magazines, pictures, Insta profiles. Everything we visually see now is edited, enhanced. You see this beautiful woman, and if you stare at her for 3 seconds, you suddenly realize she's 12 foot tall and 8 foot of it is the legs because they're stretched out and they're enhanced. You can't trust it anymore. And we're being taught to look at things and we become desensitized to it. So we're looking at TVs and we see these buildings fall over and we go, yeah. And we see these beautiful women on this beach and we're like, you skip over it. And so it's not sinking in. But the second you see someone raw, or the second you see someone unenhanced, a picture that's not suddenly showing a bright blue sky, you go, oh, look at this, because you can now relate to it, because your senses are going, hang on a minute, that's real, because, yeah, the water does look that shit. No, it's not that crystal. And we suddenly find that. And you see all these apps now that you can push a button and you can actually see your picture transformed into a place where you weren't at. So I want to see those things out of the way. I want to see people being proud to be raw, scarred, ugly, basic, primitive, because it will resonate more. And I think there's actually, I do smell a change going on where people are liking that more. I'm noticing a lot of the adverts on TV, for argument's sake, quote, using real people and not supermodels. We're starting to see that.
Yeah. And I think your message and who you are and what you stand for has been leading that charge in your own way. So I do appreciate you sharing this message, especially on this show. Is this going to be, I know this is your first book. Are you planning? How was that process for you? And are you planning on maybe doing a second one?
Well, here's the funny thing, and I don't want to sound boastful, but within the top 2% of the planet, I was quite a big deal. Most people knew how to get hold of me because my website, which we haven't even mentioned and we won't, it doesn't even have a phone number or a way of contacting me because we're very referral based.
Yeah.
I came out with this book expecting it just to be out there so people would adapt and change and benefit from what I had learned over 20 plus years. And now there's courses being built up. I do a lot more consulting for corporations and solopreneurs. So to say that I hadn't considered what the afterflow would have been is an understatement. I'm now doing way more interviews. I'm pretty much booked for this year on speaking gigs. We've launched a book now later on this year in Korea, China, and Japan. And I'm going over there. It's just, I had no idea I was going to see this flow because quite simply, it's simple stuff. You just mentioned like Naveen Jain and Sean on there. Yeah. These are incredibly intelligent people.
Sure.
I'm not. I'm incredibly street smart and I'm aware of where my education came from. But all of my stuff is very primitive and very easy to understand and and even easier to action. I really wasn't aware of the movement that it would actually start, and I'm very proud and humbled by it. So it's now taken over a lot of my life to be able to have chats with cool dudes like you.
Yeah, well, hey, we really, really appreciate you coming on and getting to share a bit of your wisdom with us. I do have a last couple questions for you. And these are questions we always ask just pertaining to the theme and kind of the name of the show. But, you know, I know you mentioned that we didn't mention your URL, but if people wanted to pick up the book, I'm going to link to everything obviously below the video and in the podcast and the show notes. But if they wanted to, you know, look at it a little more, is there any, where can they like socially stalk you in the nicest way?
Well, we changed the name uglysims.com to stevedsims.com.
Okay.
D for dog and SIMS. So stevedsims.com. You can find me on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all under Steve D. Sims.
Yeah.
And on stevedsims.com, you can actually subscribe to my newsletter and actually get the playbook as a free download and then put up with my rants and videos and hopefully tips that can activate and motivate you to actually do something.
Well, that's awesome, and we'll link to everything, like I said, down below. Steve, last couple questions here. The art of making things happen. How do you think this type of thinking, this type of mindset, how do you think it helps kind of the millennial leaders? How do you think it helps the current day CEOs and leaders? What's the best application for them?
There's primitive structures in there. I go on about how to ask a question you can't answer a no to. Never ask someone, hey, can I do this? Because the shortest answer on the planet is no.
Yeah.
But say to them, hey, what would need to happen for this to happen? You know, initiate a conversation rather than ask a question. Also, if you're getting a no, you're either asking the wrong question or the wrong person. So I'm looking at teaching you how to communicate in a win-win situation, whether it be with your best friend, a girlfriend, a wife, a husband, a branding situation, corporate, getting your tone out there. I'm all about the communication and building up that voice.
I love that. I mean, literally what you just said, if people would take that to heart in terms of reframing the no's, right? Yeah. Like that in itself is worth thousands and if not millions, depending on what business you're in. So, Steve, that was really powerful. And last question, you know, the name of the show, it's the Inner Changemaker. So what comes to Steve Sims' mind when you hear the word changemaker? Any photos, any words?
It should be worn as a badge. As entrepreneurs, the only thing that we should fear is becoming stagnant. You want to make change, and you can only make change by making fails. So harness those fails, try harder. If you didn't fail at something this week, you're not trying hard enough.
Yes.
So that's what it comes to me.
Yes, I love it. I love it. I love it. Love it. And Steve, I just want to take a few seconds to really commend you, you know, for showing up the way that you show up, to talk about your failures, you know, to showcase, you know, who you are and being a good embodiment of also your message, right? Of showing up as kind of like your pure self. And I think a lot of people could learn from that. They know that, you know, you're not necessarily trying to impress them, but the value of what you just shared, some of the content, some of that wisdom could be applied, whether they're in sales, whether they're building relationships, whether they're trying to get a date, whether they're trying to get a guest on, whatever it is. So I do appreciate you for being here, my man.
Appreciate it. Cheers, bud.
Yeah. Well, for the rest of you listeners and watchers out there, we can't wait to be here with you guys another week with another interview. But until then, remember, it's not about changing the world, but it's about becoming the leader that you need to be so you can impact those closest to you. So thank you so much for everyone for watching and listening. Thank you again, Steve.
Cheers.